The sleek black snout of Derek's BMW nosed into the relentless afternoon traffic, its taillights shrinking with an infuriating swiftness. Rain, fat and cold, began to splatter against the expansive glass frontage of the Grandview Mall entrance, but Maya barely registered it. She stood frozen, the elegant shopping bags containing her wedding dress, the one for their wedding, slipping in her numb grasp. Her phone, clutched in her other hand, was a dead black brick. He'd promised, sworn on that infuriatingly charming smile of his, that he'd be right back after her final fitting. Just a quick errand, babe, 20 minutes, tops. Liar. Instead, he'd peeled away from the curb, a flash of blonde hair in the passenger seat, his laughter, or what sounded like it, swallowed by the city's growl. Derek, stop! She'd cried out, her voice a pathetic squeak against the sudden downpour. You can't just leave me like this. But he was gone, a disappearing mirage of betrayal. Each icy raindrop that found her bare shoulders, exposed by the thin straps of her sundress, felt like a tiny personal accusation. The chic dress, chosen for a sunny afternoon of errands, now transformed into a cruel joke, clung to her skin, offering no protection against the sudden chill or the acidic taste of betrayal coating her tongue. He actually left me, she whispered, the words almost stolen by a gust of wind that whipped her hair across her face. That bastard! In the rain with my wedding dress and a dead phone? This is just perfect. She shivered, though whether from the cold or the shock, she couldn't tell. How could he? After all the promises, all the meticulously planned details for a future that now felt like a mirage. Not today, a small, desperate voice inside her pleaded. Please, not today of all days. A familiar hollowness spread through Maya's chest, an ache that had become an unwelcome companion over the years with Derek. It was the echo of every casually broken promise, every last-minute cancellation for some vague work emergency that had invariably left her waiting, doubting, and ultimately alone. I'll always be there for you, Maya. His voice, smooth and convincing, echoed in her memory, each syllable now a sharp shard of glass. You're my everything. Such beautiful lies, so easily spoken, so cruelly broken. Every single damn time, a new excuse, a perfectly crafted apology that she, fool that she was, had wanted to believe. The weight of the dress bag seemed to increase, pulling her down, a physical manifestation of the crushing weight of his deceptions. This time, though, felt different. This wasn't just a canceled dinner or a forgotten anniversary. This was the eve of their new life, and he'd left her stranded with its primary symbol. Her gaze, unfocused, drifted across the rain-lashed plaza, then snapped back into sharp clarity. A sudden, cold dread, more chilling than the rain, gripped her. The rehearsal dinner. Oh, God. The rehearsal dinner was tomorrow evening. She fumbled with the clasp of her watch, her fingers clumsy and slick with rain. 6 o'clock. That meant she had exactly 18 hours. 18 hours before 200 guests, their families, friends, his smug business partners, would assemble at the ridiculously expensive venue Derek had insisted upon. 18 hours, she breathed, the words forming a visible puff in the cool air. Her mind raced, a frantic slideshow of imagined scenarios. Her tearful, humiliated arrival, the whispers, the pitying stares, her mother's inevitable "I told you so" expression. No, she muttered, a spark igniting in the cold pit of her stomach. No, I won't be there spectacle. A harder glint entered her eyes. This isn't just about my humiliation anymore. This is about his. Her lips curved into a humorless smile. He wants a show? Oh, I'll give him a show he'll never forget. It's his reputation on the line now, not just mine. This was no longer just about a ruined day. It was about survival, about turning the tables. Just as that fierce, newfound resolve began to solidify, a different kind of gleam cut through the gray deluge. A long, impossibly sleek Rolls-Royce Phantom, the color of polished obsidian, glided to a silent stop directly in front of her. The rain seemed to part around its majestic form. For a moment, Maya could only stare, wondering if she'd finally succumbed to a stress-induced hallucination. Then, the tinted rear window whispered down, revealing a man whose face was partially obscured by shadow, but whose eyes, even in the dim light, seemed to radiate a surprising kindness. There was something about his calm demeanor, the set of his jaw, that struck a chord of familiarity, though she couldn't place him. "Excuse me, miss." His voice was a low, steady baritone cutting through the drumming rain. "Are you all right? You seem to be in some distress, and this weather is turning rather nasty." Maya blinked, startled out of her vengeful reverie. "Oh, I didn't see you," she stammered, clutching the dress bags tighter. "Am I all right? Honestly?" "No, I don't think I am. Not even close." A ghost of a smile touched the man's lips. "I understand. I couldn't help but notice what happened with the departure of that BMW. It was quite callous." "Callous?" Maya choked out a laugh that was more like a sob. "That's putting it mildly. He promised. He actually promised he'd be right back. The bastard." "Some promises are easily broken, it seems," the man observed, his gaze sympathetic. "Please, don't stay out in this downpour. Allow me to offer you a ride. You can decide where to go once you're out of the cold." Maya's eyes widened as she properly took in the opulent interior of the car. "A ride? In that? That's a Rolls Royce, isn't it?" She hesitated, a fresh wave of caution washing over her. I I don't even know who you are." "My apologies," he said smoothly. "I am Alexander Chen, and you are?" Maya Sterling." The name felt strange on her tongue, a relic from a life that had seemingly ended minutes ago. "And I'm supposed to be getting married the day after tomorrow." Her voice cracked on the last words. "Or I was." "Maya Sterling," Alexander Chen repeated, his tone gentle. "It's a pleasure, despite the unfortunate circumstances. Please, Miss Sterling, let's get you out of this rain. We can talk more if you wish, or simply ride in silence. The choice is yours." He gestured almost imperceptibly to the open door beside her. Maya looked from his kind, oddly familiar face to the luxurious sanctuary of the car, then back at the rain-swept curb where Derek had abandoned her. Anywhere was better than here. With a deep breath that tasted of rain and resolve, she nodded. "Okay, thank you, Mr. Chen." "I quite agree," Alexander Chen said softly as she ducked into the car, the scent of rich leather and subtle cologne enveloping her. "Some places hold too many bad memories, even fresh ones." The heavy door of the Rolls-Royce closed with a muted thud, cocooning Maya from the storm raging outside and, for a fleeting moment, from the tempest inside her. The scent of expensive leather and a faint, unidentifiable citrus fragrance filled her senses, a stark contrast to the damp wool smell of her ruined sundress. As Alexander Chen navigated the gleaming vehicle away from the curb with an almost imperceptible smoothness, Maya's mind, still reeling, latched onto the one tangible thing she possessed that felt like power. Derek's wallet. He'd tossed it at her that morning, telling her to take his black Amex. "For any last-minute wedding emergencies, darling," he'd said with a wink. Oh, the irony was almost too bitter to swallow. An emergency indeed. Her fingers, surprisingly steady, retrieved the cool, heavy card from her purse. The Grandview Mall receded behind them, a monument to her recent humiliation, but Maya was already looking ahead. "Mr. Chen," she began, her voice firmer than she expected, "could you possibly find a place where I can make a secure call and perhaps wait for me?" Alexander met her gaze in the rearview mirror, his expression unreadable but not unkind. "Of course, Miss Sterling, I know just the place." He drove for another 10 minutes in comfortable silence before pulling into a discreet underground garage. "My office building is upstairs. You'll have a complete privacy there." True to his word, he led her to a sumptuously appointed but empty office with a landline. "Take all the time you need." Once alone, Maya took a deep breath, the image of Derek's laughing face flashing in her mind, stoking the embers of her resolve into a burning fire. First, the Ritz-Carlton. She dialed their reservation line, her request crisp and clear. "Yes, I'd like to book your presidential suite for tonight and tomorrow night," she stated, her voice devoid of tremor. "Under the name Hamilton, Derek Hamilton." A perverse satisfaction curled her lips as she heard the click of keys on the other end. "And could you confirm the availability of your largest ballroom for a rehearsal dinner tomorrow evening, say, for 200 guests?" "Excellent." She provided Derek's Amex details with icy precision. Confirmation to Maya Sterling, please. Next, she dialed Jeanette, their perpetually flustered wedding planner. Jeanette, darling, Maya purred, adopting a tone of breezy authority that was entirely new to her. There's been a slight change of plans regarding the rehearsal dinner. Miss Sterling. Oh, thank goodness, I was about to call Mr. Hamilton's assistant. No one was answering his mobile. No need to bother Derek, he's indisposed. Maya cut in smoothly. We're moving the rehearsal dinner to the Ritz-Carlton, their main ballroom. A choked squawk came down the line. The Ritz. But Miss Sterling, all the arrangements, the deposits at Le Mirage. Consider Le Mirage a sunk cost, Jeanette. Unless you can transfer everything, flowers, catering specifics, seating charts, to the Ritz by, shall we say, noon tomorrow, I have every confidence in your abilities. Maya paused, letting the silence stretch. The presidential suite is already booked for us. Just ensure the ballroom is magnificent. Derek will be footing the bill naturally. Any questions? Jeanette, sounding utterly bewildered but cowed by Maya's newfound steel, stammered, No, Miss Sterling, the Ritz. Tomorrow, I'll handle it. Splendid, Maya said, a chillingly sweet smile playing on her lips. You do that. She hung up, a wave of giddy, terrifying power washing over her. One small step for Maya, one giant leap away from being a doormat. Her finger hovered over Derek's contact number. This was it, the first real shot across the bow. She pressed call, listening to the rings, her heart hammering against her ribs, not with fear, but with a strange, exhilarating anticipation. He answered on the fourth ring, his voice impatient and slightly slurred. What? Derek, darling, Maya said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, a stark contrast to his curt bark. Just wanted to let you know, I've upgraded our wedding rehearsal venue. So thoughtful of me, don't you think? A pause, then, Maya, where the hell are you? What are you talking about, upgraded? What was wrong with Le Mirage? I picked Le Mirage. Oh, nothing wrong with it, per se, Maya replied, examining her nails with feigned nonchalance. Just a bit. Underwhelming for the future, Mrs. Hamilton, wouldn't you agree? So I took the liberty of moving us to the Ritz-Carlton. Their ballroom is divine, and the presidential suite is simply to die for. You'll love it. The Ritz? Are you out of your goddamn mind, Maya? His voice was rising, laced with disbelief and fury. That place costs a fortune. You can't just... Oh, but I can, and I did. Maya interjected, her voice now as cold and sharp as a shard of ice. Use that emergency black Amex you so generously provided. You said for emergencies. And, well, darling, finding myself stranded at the mall by my laughing fiancé while he drives off with some blonde bimbo, I'd classify that as a rather significant emergency, wouldn't you? You wouldn't dare, he spluttered. That card is for actual emergencies, not for your insane whims. My whims? Maya laughed, a genuine, albeit slightly hysterical sound. Right now, Derek, my biggest whim is ensuring you understand that the games are over. Consider this your first official notification. The Ritz. Tomorrow evening, don't be late. She ended the call before he could unleash the torrent of abuse she knew was coming, a triumphant smirk on her face. That felt good. Incredibly good. Shakily, Maya returned to the main area where Alexander Chen was waiting, seemingly engrossed in a financial report on a sleek tablet. He looked up as she approached, his kind eyes studying her face. Everything all right, Miss Sterling? Better than all right, Mr. Chen, Maya said, a newfound confidence straightening her spine. Actually, it's Maya, and thank you for the phone, the privacy, for not leaving me out in that storm. Please call me Alexander, he offered with a slight inclination of his head. He gestured to the plush seating area. Perhaps now would be a good time for a more formal introduction and an explanation as to why I was conveniently present. Maya sank into an armchair, suddenly exhausted but also strangely energized. I must confess, Alexander began, his voice calm and measured. My presence at the mall entrance when you were inconvenienced was not entirely coincidental. I am the owner of Grandview Mall, Maya. Maya's jaw literally dropped. You own the whole mall? He nodded. Among other properties. And from my office, which overlooks that particular entrance, I've unfortunately become rather familiar with Mr. Hamilton's patterns. He paused as if choosing his words carefully. This isn't the first time I've seen him leave a woman in a similar state of distress at that exact spot. Different women, same callous departure. The blonde in his car today, for instance. I've seen her with him at the mall before on days he was supposedly at urgent client meetings. Maya felt a fresh wave of sickness wash over her, mixed with a strange sense of vindication. She wasn't just paranoid, she wasn't crazy. This was a pattern. He does this often? She whispered, horrified. At least 3 other instances in the past year that I'm personally aware of, Alexander confirmed, his expression somber. I usually have my security offer assistance discreetly. Today, seeing the wedding dress bags, it felt particularly egregious. I decided a more direct approach was warranted. He looked at her with an expression of profound sympathy. I'm truly sorry, Maya. No one deserves that kind of betrayal, especially not under these circumstances. His words, devoid of pity but full of genuine empathy, were a balm to her raw nerves. The familiar feeling she'd had about him clicked. It wasn't a specific memory, but perhaps an unconscious recognition of someone who held authority and observed things within that space she'd frequented. Maya processed this new, horrifying information. Derek wasn't just a careless, occasionally cruel fiancé. He was a serial emotional abuser, playing out his sick games with a revolving door of women. The wedding dress bags in her lap felt like props in a tragic farce. Alexander's revelation, however painful, was also a gift. The final, irrefutable piece of evidence that shattered any lingering illusions she might have harbored about the man she was supposed to marry. Her mind raced, piecing together the casual lies, the unexplained absences, the too smooth apologies. It all made a sickening kind of sense now. She looked at Alexander, a new question forming. Why tell me all this, Alexander? Why get involved? He met her gaze directly. Because, Maya, I believe in consequences. And because, frankly, I recognized a look in your eyes today that I've seen before in women who were strong enough to fight back, if only someone gave them a steady footing to start from. He leaned forward slightly. You have a very tight window now, don't you? Maya nodded, her throat tight. The adrenaline from her call with Derek was fading, replaced by a cold, hard calculation. The rehearsal dinner is at the Ritz tomorrow, 6 p.m. Thanks to me, she added with a flicker of dark humor. Which means our families, everyone, will be arriving in town throughout the day tomorrow. So, I have until then, until 6 p.m. tomorrow, to either walk down that aisle, knowing what I know now, and somehow go through with this sham of a wedding, or find another way out. A way to make sure Derek faces his own kind of music. The weight of that deadline settled upon her, immense and terrifying, yet coupled with a steely determination. The game was far from over. It had just dramatically changed arenas. The cool, sterile air of the lobby at Hamilton, Thorne and Associates did little to soothe the furious fire churning in Maya's gut. Alexander Chen had discreetly arranged a car to take her from his building to Derek's downtown law firm, a silent, supportive gesture that spoke volumes. As she'd ridden through the city, the earlier adrenaline rush had solidified into a core of icy resolve. She remembered Alexander's words. Strong enough to fight back if only someone gave them a steady footing to start from. He'd given her that footing, and now it was time to stand on it. She walked across the polished marble floor, her heels clicking with a purposeful rhythm that turned several heads. The receptionist, a young woman with an overly bright smile, looked up. Can I help you? I'm here to see Derek Hamilton, Maya stated, her voice calm and even. Maya Sterling. He's expecting me. It wasn't strictly true that he was expecting her now, in this manner, but he was certainly going to get her. One moment, Miss Sterling. The receptionist spoke softly into her headset, then nodded. Mr. Hamilton is in his office. Last door on the right, glass wall. Thank you, Maya said, already moving. The law firm was a hushed labyrinth of muted grays and expensive, soulless art. Derek's office, as promised, was a glass box at the end of a corridor, designed to showcase its occupant, a master of the universe in his domain. Today it would serve as a theater for his downfall. She could see him inside, hunched over his desk, no doubt fielding calls about the Ritz-Carlton fiasco. He looked up as she approached, his eyes widening in surprise, then narrowing with anger as she pushed open the door without knocking and stepped inside, closing it firmly behind her. The click of the latch sounded unnaturally loud in the suddenly tense silence. Several paralegals and junior associates in the open plan area outside visibly paused, their curiosity piqued. Good, let them watch. Derek shot up from his chair, his face already beginning to flush a dangerous shade of crimson. Maya, what in God's name do you think you're doing, barging in here? After that stunt you pulled with the hotel? I've been putting out fires all afternoon because of you, he hissed, keeping his voice low but vibrating with fury. He glanced nervously towards the glass wall, clearly aware of their audience. Maya allowed a small, cold smile to touch her lips. Embarrassed you in front of your partners, did I, Derek? She asked, her voice equally quiet but laced with a steely satisfaction. Good. She took another step into the room, placing her clutch bag deliberately on the edge of his expansive mahogany desk. Because I found Victoria's lingerie in your gym bag this morning. His face went from red to a blotchy white. Victoria? Lingerie? That's not what you think, he stammered, his eyes darting around as if seeking an escape route. It's a misunderstanding. A gift for you, maybe? I must have forgotten. A gift for me? Maya raised an eyebrow, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Really, Derek? Pink lace, 3 sizes too small, and smelling faintly of cheap perfume and desperation? Not really my style, darling. Besides, I didn't realize my style included items already worn by someone else. She let that sink in, watching his composure crumble. And while we're on the subject of Victoria, whose name, by the way, I now know thanks to Alexander Chen, the owner of the mall you so gallantly abandoned me at, perhaps you can explain this. She unlocked her phone, which Alexander had thoughtfully charged for her, and navigated to a text message. She didn't show it to him, just read from it in a clear, unwavering tone. It's a text you received yesterday afternoon. From Victoria, I presume. It reads, "Last night was amazing. Can't wait for the honeymoon, my love. Counting down the days until we're finally free." So, Derek, she tilted her head, her gaze pinning him. Explain it. Explain how my future husband is planning a honeymoon with another woman who apparently thinks they're going to be free very soon. Free from what, Derek? Or should I say, free from whom? He stared at her, speechless, his jaw working. The carefully constructed facade of the powerful in-control attorney was shattering before her eyes, and before the eyes of his colleagues. That's taken out of context, he finally managed, his voice raspy. She's a client. A very needy client. She misunderstands our professional relationship. A client who leaves her underwear in your gym bag and calls you my love? Maya's laugh was short and devoid of humor. You're going to have to do much better than that, Derek. Much, much better. The only sound in the sterile office for a long moment was the almost imperceptible hum of the air conditioning, a relentless, monotonous drone that seemed to amplify the tension. Maya felt a strange sense of detachment, as if she were watching this unfold from a distance. This cold, clinical room, with its sharp angles and lack of any personal warmth, felt so alien. It was a stark, unwelcome contrast to the unexpected sanctuary she'd found just hours before in Alexander Chen's Rolls-Royce. She remembered the soft classical music playing almost subliminally, the scent of old leather and books from his office, the quiet strength in his kind eyes. That car, that brief interlude of civility and support, had been like a decompression chamber, allowing her to process the initial shock and begin to think, to plan. Here, in Derek's glass cage, the air was thin and biting, thick with deceit and the stale smell of ambition. This cold, sterile place, she thought with a shiver that had nothing to do with the temperature. It's him. Alexander's world, however briefly I glimpsed it, felt sane, grounded. This place, Derek's world, was built on lies, and it was about to come crashing down. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating, as Derek struggled to formulate a response, his gaze flicking between Maya and the curious eyes beyond the glass. Just as Maya was about to press her advantage further, a new sound intruded, the distinct click of a lock, followed by the soft creak of a door opening from within Derek's private ensuite bathroom. Maya's head turned, every nerve ending suddenly on high alert. Derek's eyes widened in sheer panic, his face a mask of horror. "No, don't!" he started, but it was too late. A woman emerged, slender and blonde, adjusting the skirt of a rumpled but expensive-looking dress. It was the same blonde Maya had glimpsed in Derek's car as he'd sped away from the mall. Victoria. She blinked in the brighter light of the office, a confused frown on her perfectly made-up face. Then her eyes landed on Maya and then on Derek's apoplectic expression. Her frown deepened. "Derek, honey?" Victoria's voice was high-pitched, slightly nasal. "Is everything okay? I heard shouting and then it got really quiet. I thought maybe your important meeting was over." She took a few steps further into the room, her gaze flicking uncertainly between them. Maya felt a cold, hard knot settle in her stomach, but outwardly she remained unnervingly calm. Confirmation. Not that she'd needed much more, but here it was in living, breathing, skirt-adjusting color. "Victoria, I presume?" Maya said, her voice dangerously soft. "The owner of the pink lace and the enthusiastic texter." She gestured vaguely towards the bathroom. "How cozy. Were you in there the whole time, dear? Did you enjoy the show?" Victoria flushed beet red, her eyes darting to Derek, who looked as though he was about to have a stroke. Derek? Who is this?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "This," Derek croaked, looking utterly defeated, "is Maya, my fiancé." Victoria's perfectly sculpted jaw dropped. "Your fiancé!" she shrieked, whipping her head back to stare at Maya with wide, disbelieving eyes. "But you told me you said it was practically over, that you were just waiting for the right time to—" "Oh, I think the right time has just arrived. Wouldn't you agree, Derek?" Maya interjected, her voice like silk and steel. "For all sorts of truths to come out." She looked from Derek's ashen face to Victoria's stunned one. The game had just escalated, and she had a feeling the most shocking revelations were yet to come. Victoria's shriek, "Your fiancé?" still seemed to vibrate in the glass-walled office, sucking the remaining air out of the room. Derek looked like a cornered animal, his eyes darting between Maya and Victoria, a sheen of sweat glistening on his forehead despite the cool air. Maya, however, felt a chillingly calm focus descend upon her. Just as she was about to respond to Victoria's horrified question, her phone, still clutched in her hand, buzzed with an incoming message from Alexander Chen. It was a compressed file, accompanied by a short text. Maya thought this might be pertinent, more, if you need it, A. Her heart gave a queer lurch. With a steady hand, she opened the file. It contained a series underscore of time-stamped security footage clips from Grandview Mall. Derek and Victoria, laughing, holding hands, kissing in a secluded corner of the parking garage. Not just today, but last week, last month. Stretching back over what looked like many months. There were also scanned documents, bank statements with suspicious transfers. A lease agreement for a luxury downtown apartment in Victoria's name, with payments originating from an account Maya didn't recognize, but which bore Derek's name as a secondary holder. The final document was a summary sheet, apparently prepared by Alexander or his team, highlighting transactions from what appeared to be a client trust account linked to Derek's firm, siphoning funds into the account paying for Victoria's apartment. Maya's blood ran cold. This wasn't just an affair. This was something far uglier, far more dangerous. She looked up, her gaze locking onto Derek, then flicking to a bewildered Victoria. "Yes, Victoria," Maya said, her voice eerily calm. "His fiancée. The one he was supposed to marry the day after tomorrow. The one he apparently intended to discard like yesterday's trash after, I assume, securing access to my family's money." She saw Derek flinch. But it seems our dear Derek has been a very busy boy on multiple fronts. Maya turned her phone screen so Derek could see a glimpse of the footage. "Recognize this, Derek? Grandview Mall. You two seem quite, comfortable there," repeatedly. "For, about 8 months, according to these timestamps, Alexander's little gift to me." Victoria gasped, her hand flying to her mouth as she, too, caught sight of the images. 8 months? Victoria whispered, looking at Derek with dawning horror. You told me it was new. You said she meant nothing to you. Derek opened his mouth, then closed it, a strangled sound escaping him. He looked like a man watching his world implode. But the affair, as tawdry as it is almost the least of your problems, isn't it, Derek? Maya continued, her voice hardening. She swiped to the financial documents. This apartment Victoria is living in, she said, her eyes boring into Derek's. The one on Bishop Street, penthouse suite, I believe. Lovely place. Must cost a fortune. Victoria looked confused. How did you... The question, Victoria, Maya cut her off, is not how I know, but how Derek afforded it on his salary, especially with a lavish wedding to plan. Maya's gaze returned to Derek, cold and accusatory. Because these documents, Derek, seem to indicate that you've been, shall we say, creatively reallocating funds. From your firm's client trust accounts, no less? Embezzlement, I believe, is the technical term for it. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Derek actually swayed on his feet, his face a ghastly shade of gray. That's a lie! Forged! You can't prove any of that! He choked out, his voice barely a whisper. Oh, I think Alexander Chen can, Maya said softly. He owns them all, remember? He has access to quite a bit of information, and he seems to be very thorough. He mentioned something about patterns. It seems your pattern of deceit extends beyond just your romantic entanglements, Derek. It goes straight into your professional ethics. Or lack thereof. Victoria was now staring at Derek, her face a mask of terror and dawning comprehension. Embezzlement! Derek, what has she found out? What have you done? She cried, backing away from him. You told me that money was from a successful investment. Shut up, Victoria, Derek snarled, his composure finally snapping. He turned back to Maya, his eyes blazing with a desperate, trapped fury. You bitch! You think you can ruin me with this garbage? Ruin you? Maya raised an eyebrow. Derek, darling, you've done an absolutely splendid job of that all by yourself. I'm just here to pull back the curtain and let everyone see the real magician at work. She gestured around the glass office, a silent acknowledgement of the colleagues still watching, their faces now a mixture of shock and morbid fascination. Quite the matinee performance you're giving them. The implications of the word embezzlement settled heavily in the room, far weightier than the affair. Maya felt a strange clarity, as if the fog of her emotional turmoil had been burned away by the sheer audacity of Derek's crimes. So, here we are, Derek, she said, her voice dropping to a conversational, almost chillingly reasonable tone. Tomorrow, approximately this time, 24 hours from now. It's quite the crossroads you've led us to, isn't it? She began to pace slowly in the confined space, her gaze never leaving his. Option 1. I somehow, miraculously, decide to overlook your extensive extracurricular activities, your 8-month torrid affair with Victoria here, your penchant for abandoning fiancés at shopping malls, and your rather spectacular financial creativity. I put on that ridiculously expensive wedding dress, walk down the aisle at the Ritz-Carlton, your new, upgraded venue, by the way, you're welcome, and become Mrs. Derek Hamilton. She paused, letting the image hang in the air. Imagine the wedding photos, Derek. You, me, and the silent, screaming knowledge of all this betrayal and criminality. A marriage built on a foundation of lies and stolen money. Sounds like a fairy tale, doesn't it? Victoria made a choked sound, tears now streaming down her face. He swore he loved me. He said we'd build a life. Maya ignored her, her focus entirely on Derek. Or, she continued, her voice hardening, there's option 2. Tomorrow, instead of practicing my vows, I could be practicing my testimony. I walk into the offices of the State Bar Association with Mr. Chen's rather meticulously compiled evidence. And I'm sure he can find more. He's very resourceful, and I tell them everything. About the embezzlement from client accounts, about how you've been using your position of trust to defraud the people who rely on your firm for honesty and integrity, all to fund your sordid little affair and lifestyle. She stopped directly in front of him. Disbarment would be the least of it, Derek. We're talking potential criminal charges, jail time, the complete and utter destruction of your career, your reputation, everything you've pretended to build. Derek was breathing heavily, his chest heaving. You wouldn't. You wouldn't dare destroy your own future, too. The scandal. Your family. My future? Maya laughed, a brittle, sharp sound. Derek, you already tried to destroy my future by treating me like a fool and a disposable convenience. The difference is, my future can be rebuilt on honesty. Yours, it seems, is about to be bulldozed by your own greed and stupidity. As for my family, they'll be shocked, certainly. But they'll support me for telling the truth. Can you say the same for your partners out there when they find out you've been looting client funds? She nodded towards the glass wall, where the audience of his colleagues was now visibly agitated, some whispering into phones. The news was clearly already spreading. So you have until the rehearsal dinner tomorrow evening, Derek. 6 o'clock. You either face me there and we somehow pretend this nightmare isn't happening, or you face the consequences of your actions with the authorities. Choose wisely. Instead of the despair and hysteria that Derek probably expected, or even the vengeful fury she had every right to feel, Maya felt a profound, almost unnerving calm settle over her. It was as if the sheer magnitude of his betrayal and criminality had acted as a perverse clarifying agent, burning away all the confusion, the hurt, the self-doubt. She saw him now for exactly what he was: a weak, narcissistic fraud, a common thief hiding behind an expensive suit and a veneer of charm. The pain was still there, a dull ache deep inside, but it was overshadowed by a new, empowering certainty. He thought I would crumble, she realized with a startling clarity. He expected tears, hysterics, a messy, emotional breakdown. He's used to women he can manipulate with crocodile tears or bully into submission. Her eyes flicked to Victoria, who was now sobbing openly, a crumpled mess by Derek's desk. Yes, Derek was used to Victoria. He wasn't used to this new Maya. He thought I was weak, just another conquest, another stepping stone. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched Maya's lips. But this avalanche of evidence, this utter confirmation of his depravity, it isn't a burden, it's ammunition. It's a weapon. And for the first time in her life, Maya felt like she truly understood how to wield one. She had leverage, real, actionable, life-altering leverage. The choice she'd given Derek was almost a formality. She already knew what she was going to do. The wedding was off. The life she'd imagined was a mirage. But a new path was opening up, a path paved not with diamonds and deceit, but with truth and, quite possibly, justice. It's over, Derek, she said, her voice quiet but resolute, carrying the finality of a judge's gavel. One way or another, your charade ends tomorrow. She turned, her back straight, and walked towards the door, leaving him standing amidst the ruins of his life, with his tearful mistress and the stunned silence of his colleagues as his only companions. The hum of the air conditioning was the only sound that followed her out. The sterile environment of Derek's law firm felt miles away, though only an hour had passed since Maya had walked out, leaving him in the smoldering ruins of his carefully constructed life. Alexander Chen, ever discreet and efficient, had anticipated her next move. A fresh set of files awaited her in the car he'd arranged, more detailed than what he'd sent to her phone earlier. Copies of public filings, property records, and incorporation documents, all meticulously organized and annotated. These were the sinews of the case against Derek, tangible proof that went beyond grainy security footage. Armed with this, Maya directed the driver to the downtown police precinct. Walking through the heavy doors of the station felt like crossing another Rubicon. The air inside was thick with the smell of stale coffee, disinfectant, and human anxiety. After a brief explanation to a tired-looking desk sergeant, she was escorted to a small, cluttered office to meet Detective Rodriguez, a man whose weary eyes seemed to have witnessed every shade of human failing. Maya laid the neatly bound set of documents on his desk. "Detective Rodriguez," she began, her voice clear and steady, "I'm here to report a crime, a significant financial crime, embezzlement, and I have substantial evidence to support my claim." Rodriguez, a man in his late 40s with a salt and pepper mustache and a skeptical arch to his eyebrows, picked up the top file. "Miss Sterling, Maya Sterling." "And who are you accusing, Miss Sterling?" he asked, already flipping through the pages, his expression neutral. Derek Hamilton, a partner at Hamilton, Thorne and Associates, Maya stated. My fiancé. The word felt like ash in her mouth. Rodriguez paused, looking up at her sharply. Your fiancé? And you're accusing him of embezzlement? He leaned back in his chair, the springs groaning in protest. That's a hell of an accusation to make against the man you're about to marry. You have a wedding dress in those bags you brought in with you from the lobby, Miss Sterling? Maya glanced at the garment bags she'd almost forgotten she was still carrying, now propped against the wall like silent, reproachful ghosts. Yes, Detective, that's rather the point. Detective Rodriguez continued to sift through the documents, his initial skepticism slowly giving way to a more focused attention. He whistled softly as he examined a series of bank transfers. These are client trust accounts, all right? And these sums, they're not insignificant. He tapped a page detailing the lease for Victoria's penthouse. And this apartment, paid for by funds routed through a shell corporation that Mr. Hamilton appears to control. He looked up at Maya, his gaze shrewd. Miss Sterling, I have to ask. You're scheduled to be married, I presume. Very soon? The rehearsal dinner is tomorrow evening, Maya confirmed, her voice flat. The wedding, the day after. Rodriguez leaned back further, steepling his fingers. Ma'am, are you sure you want to do this the day before your wedding festivities begin? This is going to detonate a bomb in your life, your family's life, his career. These are prominent people. You understand the implications if this goes public or even if it just goes to the DA? Maya met his gaze without flinching, her own reflecting a resolve that seemed to surprise him. Detective Rodriguez, I understand the implications perfectly. I've spent the last several hours understanding them. What I'm sure about is that I was about to marry a man who is not only a liar and a cheat on a personal level, but also a thief who preys on vulnerable clients. I'm sure I want to do this because of our wedding, not in spite of it. Her voice, though quiet, resonated with unwavering conviction. He didn't just betray me. He betrayed his oath as an officer of the court. He betrayed everyone who trusted him. If I don't do this now, when will I? After he's potentially squandered my family's money too. After he's ruined more innocent lives? Rodriguez studied her for a long moment. You've got guts, Miss Sterling, I'll give you that. Or you're very, very angry. Perhaps both, Detective, Maya conceded. But the anger is just fuel. The decision is a rational one. He needs to be stopped. She pushed another file across the desk, the one Alexander had labeled Victoria Albright Financials. And I don't think he was working entirely alone. Rodriguez opened the new file, his brow furrowing as he scanned the contents. It contained more detailed bank records linked to Victoria, showing not just passive receipt of funds, but active withdrawals, transfers to offshore accounts, and even emails recovered from a public data breach that hinted at a deeper involvement. Victoria Albright, Rodriguez murmured, tapping her name. The mistress, I take it? Yes, Maya confirmed. The one I found in his office bathroom an hour ago. Her name is all over these transactions, Miss Sterling, Rodriguez said slowly, his eyes narrowing in concentration. These aren't just gifts he was showering on her. Some of these transfers from the embezzled funds go directly into accounts solely in her name, and then almost immediately move elsewhere, offshore. And these email fragments, they discuss our nest egg, after the merger, and making sure M's assets are liquid. He looked up sharply at Maya. M, that's you, isn't it? Your family has money, Miss Sterling? Maya felt a fresh wave of nausea. My father built a successful software company. We're comfortable. Comfortable enough that someone might see you as a way to cover a very large financial hole, perhaps? Rodriguez posited, his voice grim. Miss Sterling, this woman, Victoria Albright, it's starting to look like she wasn't just Derek Hamilton's mistress. She may very well be his co-conspirator in the embezzlement scheme. He pointed to a highlighted section in one of the emails. Once the wedding is done and the family accounts are merged, we can pay back the initial draw and still have plenty left to disappear with. Disappear, Miss Sterling. The final, ugly piece of the puzzle slammed into place. It wasn't just about funding an affair, it was a calculated, predatory plan. Victoria wasn't just a pawn, she was a player. They had been systematically looting Derek's clients, and the wedding to Maya, the merger of her family's assets, was intended to be their grand exit strategy. Use Maya's money to plug the holes in the client accounts they'd drained, and then vanish with the rest. The coldness of it, the sheer sociopathic greed, was staggering. So, he wasn't just going to leave me, Maya whispered, more to herself than to Rodriguez. He was going to rob me, rob my family, and then leave me. And Victoria was in on it from the start. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a meticulously planned financial execution. Detective Rodriguez nodded grimly. That's what it looks like. They were playing a long game, Miss Sterling, and you were the final mark. He stood up abruptly. Okay, this changes things. This isn't just a jilted fiancé reporting an errant partner. This is organized, premeditated fraud and potentially a flight risk if they realize the game is up. He glanced at the clock on the wall. It read 2:15 p.m. Damn it, we need to move on this and fast. If we want to get a warrant from a judge to freeze those accounts, seize evidence from his office and Victoria's apartment, or even bring them in for questioning before they get spooked and shred everything or book a one-way ticket to a non-extradition country, we're on a tight clock. Maya sat up straighter. What kind of clock, Detective? The kind that ends when the courthouse closes for the day, Miss Sterling, Rodriguez said, already reaching for his phone. Which is at 5 p.m. sharp. That gives us... He did a quick mental calculation. Less than 3 hours. 3 hours to get a judge to sign off, get our ducks in a row, and potentially stop them before Derek realizes that confrontation in his office wasn't just an angry fiancé letting off steam, but the opening salvo of a full-blown criminal investigation. He was already dialing. I need to brief the assistant DA, get a team ready. Miss Sterling, are you prepared to give a formal sworn statement right now? Absolutely, Detective, Maya said, her voice ringing with a clarity and purpose that surprised even herself. The image of the wedding dress bag still leaning against the wall caught her eye. They no longer looked like ghosts of a dead future, but rather symbols of an escape, a narrow miss from a life of devastating lies. What are we waiting for? The grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton was a symphony of opulence, exactly as Maya had sardonically instructed Jeanette the wedding planner to make it. Crystal chandeliers dripped diamonds of light onto tables groaning under the weight of floral centerpieces and gleaming silverware. 200 guests, a curated collection of Maya's family, Derek's family, their friends, and, importantly, Derek's influential law partners and their clients mingled, their laughter and chatter echoing beneath the soaring, gilded ceiling. This was meant to be the joyous prelude to a storybook wedding. Maya had arrived fashionably late, a vision in a striking sapphire blue gown that shimmered under the lights, a stark contrast to the virginal white she was supposed to wear in less than 48 hours. Alexander Chen was discreetly by her side, a silent pillar of support, before melting into the background to observe. Derek, looking pale and harried despite his impeccably tailored suit, rushed towards her, his smile overly bright and unconvincing. Maya, darling, you made it. We were worried. His eyes darted around, a nervous tick betraying his anxiety. He knew, on some level, that the ground beneath his feet was unstable since her visit to his office, and the subsequent ominous silence from her, coupled with unsettling calls from his bank about frozen accounts that morning. But he clearly hadn't anticipated this. Maya offered him a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Worried, Derek? You shouldn't have been. I wouldn't miss this for the world. Her gaze swept the room, taking in the expectant faces, many of whom had witnessed her humiliation at his firm. Such a lovely turnout. Before Derek could steer her towards their designated table of honor, she glided towards the small dais where a microphone stood ready for the traditional toasts. The appointed best man, when one of Derek's smarmy junior partners was just about to clear his throat and begin the proceedings. Maya reached the microphone first. Excuse me, she said, her voice amplified, cutting cleanly through the ambient noise. A hush fell over the ballroom. Good evening, everyone. For those of you who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, I'm Maya Sterling, the bride-to-be. A hopeful flutter of applause rippled through the room. Maya waited for it to die down, her eyes finding Derek's across the sea of faces. His forced smile was frozen, a rictus of dawning horror. Or perhaps, she continued, her voice dropping slightly, not to be. We'll see how the evening unfolds, shall we? A confused murmur rippled through the guests. Derek started forward, his face paling rapidly. Maya, what are you doing? He managed, his voice a strained whisper that didn't carry, but his panicked expression did. Maya ignored him, her gaze sweeping the room before settling back on him with a predatory calm. Derek, honey, she called out, her voice laced with a saccharine sweetness that was far more menacing than any shout. Since we have everyone gathered, all our friends, family, your esteemed colleagues, I was hoping you could enlighten us all a little. Perhaps share some of your remarkable financial planning skills? Maya! Derek's voice was sharper now, a note of desperation creeping in as he started to push his way through the tables towards her. This isn't the time or the place. You're making a scene. A scene? Maya tilted her head. Oh, I think the real scene is what's been happening behind closed doors, isn't it, darling? I'm just interested in transparency. For instance, how you've been managing other people's money. Their trust accounts, specifically. You're so clever with numbers, Derek. Tell us about your investment strategies for those. Several of Derek's law partners exchanged uneasy glances. The air crackled with tension. You're embarrassing yourself, Maya, Derek finally hissed, having reached the edge of the dais, his face contorted with fury and fear. And me? And our families? Get down from there! No, Derek, Maya replied, her voice unwavering, each word delivered with precision. I'm not embarrassing myself, I'm exposing you. Her gaze swept over the bewildered faces of her own family, then to Derek's parents, who looked horrified. I'm sorry to do this here, to put you all through this, but some truths are too important to remain hidden. This is insane, Derek practically yelled, lunging for the microphone. Maya sidestepped him gracefully. She's clearly having some kind of breakdown. She's overwrought. The stress of the wedding? A breakdown? Maya's laugh was cold and clear. Oh, that's good, Derek. Very good. You can use that. Tell them I'm hysterical, irrational, a woman scorned. Her eyes narrowed, her voice dropping to a deadly serious pitch that carried to every corner of the silent ballroom. Make that your story. It might even be your only defense when the FBI arrives to ask you about wire fraud and embezzlement. Because they are coming, Derek. Very, very soon. The mention of the FBI sent a fresh shockwave through the room. Derek froze, his bravado vanishing, replaced by a stark, visceral terror. Before Derek could utter another word, Maya turned to the large projection screen behind the dais, which had been intended for a sentimental slideshow of the happy couple. And just in case anyone still believes Derek's version of events, or thinks I'm merely a woman scorned having a breakdown, perhaps a little visual aid will clarify things. With a subtle nod towards a corner of the room where Alexander Chen stood observing, the screen flickered to life. Not with smiling photos, but with the cold, hard facts of Derek's duplicity. Crisp images of bank statements appeared showing highlighted transfers from client trust accounts into shadowy shell corporations. Then, the damning lease agreement for Victoria Albright's luxury penthouse, with payment trails leading straight back to those same siphoned client funds. Next, selections from the Grandview Mall security footage. Derek and Victoria, not just once, but repeatedly over 8 months, their intimate embraces and stolen kisses, a stark betrayal of everything he'd ever promised Maya. With each new piece of evidence, a collective gasp went through the room. Derek's face, projected in a small window beside the evidence whenever he was implicated in footage, drained of all color, leaving it a sickly grayish hue. He looked like he was about to collapse. Maya didn't need to narrate much. The evidence spoke for itself, painting a devastating picture of greed, deceit, and calculated betrayal. This, ladies and gentlemen, Maya said, her voice ringing with a righteous anger she no longer tried to conceal, is the man I was supposed to marry. A man who not only betrayed my trust, but the trust of his clients, his partners, and everyone who believed in him. She gestured to the screen where an email chain between Derek and Victoria discussed their plans to use M's assets to cover their tracks after the wedding. He, along with his accomplice, Victoria Albright, didn't just plan to defraud his clients. They plan to use my family's money to cover up their crimes before disappearing. The ballroom erupted. Shouts of disbelief and outrage echoed from multiple tables. Derek's senior partners were on their feet, their faces apoplectic. "Client funds! Hamilton, what in God's name have you done?" one of them roared, his voice shaking with fury. Another was already on his phone, presumably calling forensic accountants or legal counsel. Derek's father, a stern, upright man, looked utterly broken, burying his face in his hands. His mother was weeping openly. Maya watched the chaos unfold, a grim satisfaction mixing with the lingering pain. This was the implosion. This was the consequence. As security guards, alerted by the hotel manager who Alexander had quietly briefed, began to move discreetly towards Derek, Maya raised her hand for silence. Surprisingly, the room quieted, all eyes turning back to her. "This chapter of my life," she said, her voice clear and strong over the shocked murmurs, "is now definitively closed. But as one door closes, another always opens." Her eyes found Alexander Chen, who offered a subtle, encouraging nod. "And on that note, I have one final announcement. While this particular partnership has proven to be disastrously ill-advised," she paused, allowing a small, ironic smile, "I'm thrilled to be embarking on a new and far more promising one. Starting next month, I will be taking on a significant role at Chen Development, working alongside Alexander to expand their luxury retail and property portfolio." A fresh wave of murmurs, this time tinged with surprise and admiration, swept the room. Maya Sterling was not just a victim, she was a survivor, already architecting her comeback. She had not only exposed the villain, but had also, in the same breath, announced her ascent. The taste of freedom, she was beginning to learn, was indeed far sweeter than any revenge, but a little public justice didn't hurt either. The immediate aftermath of Maya's revelations and her stunning announcement was a maelstrom of controlled chaos. Hotel security, efficient and impassive, were indeed escorting a now utterly broken Derek Hamilton towards a side exit, his protestations lost in the uproar from his furious business partners and the shocked gasps of the assembled guests. Photographers who had been invited to capture a joyous pre-wedding celebration were now furiously snapping images of a very different kind of drama, the public annihilation of a golden couple. Maya watched him go, not with triumph, but with a profound sense of release, as if a massive, unseen weight had finally been lifted from her shoulders. Alexander Chen materialized beside her, his expression calm amidst the storm. "Are you all right, Maya?" he asked quietly, his voice a steady anchor. She took a deep breath, the scent of lilies and expensive perfume suddenly cloying. "I will be, Alexander, more than all right." As Derek reached the doorway, his shoulders slumped in defeat, he turned for one last, desperate look at Maya. His eyes, wild and pleading, sought hers. It was then she delivered her final, quiet coup de grace, her voice carrying only to him and perhaps to Alexander. "Oh, and Derek," she said, her tone almost conversational, a ghost of a sympathetic smile playing on her lips. "You were right about one thing. Back when you were trying to convince me this whole mess was just me having a breakdown, this marriage, it truly would have been an unmitigated disaster." He flinched as if struck, then disappeared from view, swallowed by the consequences he had so arrogantly invited. The murmur in the ballroom slowly began to subside, replaced by a stunned, buzzing silence, as people tried to process the sheer scale of the implosion they had just witnessed. Maya, however, felt a quiet sense of peace descend. The storm had passed. 6 months later, the view from Maya Sterling's corner office on the 20th floor was panoramic, overlooking the sprawling cityscape. Directly below, nestled like a multifaceted jewel, was the Grandview Mall. Every morning, as she drove to work in her own silver Rolls-Royce to dawn, appropriately enough, she would pass that exact spot by the main entrance where her old life had so spectacularly shattered in the pouring rain. Funny, she often thought, a wistful smile touching her lips as she navigated the city traffic. How the worst day of your life can actually be the first day of your real life. The memory of the cold rain, the dead phone, the crushing weight of betrayal no longer brought a sting, but rather a sense of profound gratitude. That rain, she'd mused one crisp autumn morning, watching the early sunlight glint off the mall's glass facade. It wasn't an ending, it was a baptism. It washed away all the illusions, all the carefully constructed lies I'd told myself for years. Derek, she'd read in the financial pages with a detached sort of interest, had pleaded guilty to several counts of federal embezzlement and wire fraud to avoid a more prolonged and humiliating trial. 18 months in a minimum security federal penitentiary was his sentence. 18 months for him to reflect on the true cost of his greed, Maya would reflect. A small price, perhaps, for the lives he'd damaged. Victoria Albright, true to the information Detective Rodriguez had uncovered, had indeed been a willing co-conspirator. Her tearful testimony against Derek, painting herself as a manipulated victim, while conveniently omitting her more active role until confronted with irrefutable evidence, had earned her immunity from prosecution but had cost her everything else. Her reputation, her ill-gotten gains, most of which were clawed back, and any semblance of a future in the city. A hollow victory for her, I imagine, Maya considered, signing off on a new marketing strategy for Chen Development's latest luxury retail venture. She got her freedom, but what is freedom without integrity? Managing Alexander Chen's rapidly expanding luxury retail empire was more than a job. It was a passion, a challenge she embraced with a ferocity and creativity she hadn't known she possessed. And me, she'd often whispered the city skyline, a genuine, contented smile gracing her features. I got this, a chance to build something real, something mine. The taste of true freedom, she had learned with every passing successful day, was infinitely sweeter, more complex and satisfying than any fleeting desire for revenge could ever have been. She never looked back, not with longing, not with regret, not even with much anger anymore. What was the point? The view ahead, she'd told Alexander once, as they stood on the observation deck of a new Chen skyscraper, is so much more compelling, don't you think? He had simply smiled, his eyes full of a quiet pride that warmed her more than any accolade. There were no ghosts from her past life haunting her present. The wedding dress, still in its elegant bags, had been donated to a charity that provided formal wear for underprivileged young women, a symbol of hope repurposed. The Ritz-Carlton Ballroom was just another venue now, one she occasionally booked for Chen Development events, the irony not lost on her but stripped of its power to wound. Derek, from his cell window, saw a different view, a rectangle of unforgiving sky, usually gray, framed by concrete and steel bars. He had plenty of time to look back, to replay the moments of his downfall, to curse the ambition that had soured into avarice, to resent the woman who had refused to be his final, most profitable victim. She won, he'd sometimes admit to the oppressive silence of his cell, the two words a bitter acknowledgement of a battle he had catastrophically lost, long before he even realized he was fighting it. He'd traced the cracks in the paint on the wall, each one a map of his own shattered illusions. But Maya Sterling wasn't thinking of him, or his cracks, or his regrets. She was too busy charting her own course, building her own empire, breathing the clean, exhilarating air of a life lived authentically on her own terms. The rain had stopped long ago, and the sun was shining brightly on her horizon,